From spending decades in obscurity before getting his big break, to the fans hating his queer Western film for not being steamy enough, here's why Padro Pascal should quit while he's ahead. You have to admit, the guy spent decades in the shadows before playing Oberyn Martell. The suave Dornish prince might have boosted Pascal's career, but he had a long, hard road getting there. It all started with his rough childhood, with Pascal's family being forced to flee Chile during Pinochet's regime. This proved to be too much for his mom, who took her own life when Pedro was just 24 years old. He's often talked about how the trauma of this loss has stuck with him all these years. But he still managed to soldier on and make a respectable career for himself. In case you didn't know, his mother's death inspired him to take her maiden name, Pascal. So it was clearly a core part of his journey from the very start. Now, Pedro wasn't exactly a globally renowned actor early on in his career. He got one of his first prominent roles in 1999 when he played Edward on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But he mostly stuck to theater work. You might think that an actor of his stature must have had a thriving career on Broadway or the prestigious West End. But it turns out that he could only manage off-Broadway productions. He spent much of the 2000s building a rep as a respectable performer. And he even became friends with Oscar Isaac when they worked together in 2006. But true fame still eluded him. Things started to change in the 2010s when Pascal cinched his first recurring TV role in The Good Wife. He followed this up with a multi-episode arc on the boxing drama Lights Out, and his career kicked into overdrive around 2013. Graceland gave him a solid 10 episodes on the air, and soon after that, Pascal made his way to prestige television with perhaps his most famous role before The Mandalorian, Oberyn Martell on Game of Thrones. The rest of the 2010s treated him pretty well too. He got a regular role on Narcos, which was then followed by promotion to lead actor by the third season. The 3 years he spent on that show cemented his place as a genuine TV star. But even so, Pedro only enjoyed middling fame in the 2010s. His career really took off after The Mandalorian, which thrust the Chilean actor into the global spotlight for the very first time. You've got to understand, The Mandalorian was by far the biggest gig Pascal had ever gotten up until that point. I'm not saying Oberyn Martell wasn't a solid role, but it paled in comparison to the red carpet darling Pascal became after Din Djarin. Starting in 2019, the whole world came to know him as the mysterious bounty hunter, and Pascal got further work by playing the character in the Book of Boba Fett in 2022. Oh, and he played the bad guy in Wonder Woman 1984 too. So that's a serious step up for someone that used to get by on minor TV roles and off-Broadway plays. Fast forward to 2023, and Pascal somehow took his career to even greater heights thanks to The Last of Us. The iconic video game came out around the same time he was auditioning for Game of Thrones. And by 2023, a TV adaptation was finally released on HBO. All of a sudden, everyone and their mother knew who Pedro Pascal was. Game of Thrones and The Mandalorian might have made him a favorite among nerdy fandoms, but Last of Us had a way broader fan base, and it allowed Pedro to become a bona fide celebrity. That said, isn't it kind of weird that he started getting so many roles in his 40s? Most actors are past their prime by then. So how exactly has Pascal succeeded against all odds? And what's more, why did it take so long for him to get his career going? There's a theory going around that he can't really act. Don't just take it from me. Plenty of folks on Reddit have been wondering what all the fuss is about. I mean, yeah, Pascal is talented enough to say his lines with conviction, but that's the bare minimum. Any actor worth their salt can do what he does. Yet most of them don't get anywhere close to Pedro's level of fame. It's not like he suddenly started acting in the 2010s either. Pascal's been a working actor since he was 20 years old, which makes his abrupt rise to fame rather sus in my book. Does he just have a really good agent? Or did he butter up HBO execs that much during Game of Thrones that they decided to change his life? Well, sort of. But it might also have something to do with his daddy persona. You see, both his biggest roles involve him being a dedicated father figure to someone he's not even related to. Din Djarin's tasked with protecting Grogu, and Joel Miller's responsible for safely getting Ellie to the Fireflies. It didn't take long for Pascal-themed fan cams and thirst traps to absolutely flood the internet. Every other Twitter account went gaga over clips of Joel saying, "baby girl."
It's okay, baby girl.
And I can see why. After all, Pedro's a seriously attractive man. But there's also more to it than that. In a world of cookie-cutter celebrities that seem more like walking jawlines than real people, Pascal brings a unique, rugged charm to the table. It also helps that he thrives in the public eye, approaching every fan interaction with enthusiasm and warmth. It was only a matter of time before the internet collectively dubbed him their daddy. And that's just what happened following The Last of Us. In fact, some might say that the whole daddy thing's gone too far. Pedro's well aware of what people think of him, and he's even gone on the record to say that he occasionally checks out his own fan cams, mostly when he's feeling low on confidence. As shocking as this might sound, Pedro's a human being at the end of the day, so he's subject to the same insecurities as the rest of us. And all the fame in the world can't change that. This might make it seem like he loves millions of people calling him their daddy, but there are several moments where he seems downright uncomfortable with the label. Access Hollywood once tried to get him to read some thirst tweets from fans, and I gotta tell ya, Pedro looked like he wanted to die at that moment. He handled the situation surprisingly gracefully, but he was pretty clear about how inappropriate they were being. It's easy to see stuff like this as positive from the outside, but Pedro's often annoyed that his acting takes a backseat to his so-called daddy vibes. As much as he likes the attention, he'd much prefer it if people commented on his work for a change. But can he really keep his career going without it? Whether he actively tries to move away from daddy roles so that he gets taken seriously, or the fans tire of the gimmick and move on to something else, Pascal's career would be at risk. With at least one more season of The Last of Us and The Mandalorian on the cards, it's hard to see Pascal maintaining his status as a cultural icon if he doesn't play along. He's already tried his hands at different roles a couple of times, starting with the unbearable weight of massive talent in 2022. The film had a $30 million budget, and it gave Pedro the chance to star alongside none other than Nicolas Cage. He was punching above his weight here, because The Last of Us hadn't even been released yet. So this gig showed everyone that Pascal had what it took to join the big leagues. One small problem though, the film bombed at the box office, like it didn't even recover its budget, let alone make a profit. Which suggests that Pedro's not much of a draw if fans can't sexualize him. You can see this in how fans reacted to Strange Way of Life too. Pedro was trying to branch out into more challenging roles with the film, but the fans hated the movie because it wasn't erotic enough for them. Pedro played a cowboy questioning his sexuality, and while it got him some glowing critical reviews, fans seemed bored to death by it. You see, when Pascal fans found out he'd be playing a gay cowboy, they were thrilled at the prospect of seeing him getting down and dirty with his co-lead Ethan Hawke. Unfortunately, the film largely focused on the emotional arc of the characters, and fans only got to see one brief glimpse of Pedro's bum. Pascal only seems to have fans that want to sexualize him, so it might be time for him to come to terms with reality. Once the internet finds itself a new daddy, I just can't see Pedro having much of a career anymore. So, from the fans hating his boldest project because they wanted him to show more skin, to the many years he struggled before catching a lucky break, this was why Pedro Pascal should quit while he's ahead.